Hey everybody, welcome back to DJ Tutorials. And today we're going to be looking at something a little bit different. We're not going to be looking at Blender or Natron or any of that. We're going to be looking at this interesting renderer. I got a request to take a look at this. This is not a sponsored video, by the way, but I really kind of like what these folks are doing. So I kind of wanted to show you guys what this was. Is a light tracer render. You can go to lighttracer.org and check it out. Before we start, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We also have a Discord server where you can ask questions or just share renders and hang out. And if you are interested, you can also become a patron where you can get early access to videos, project downloads, personal reviews, or tutorials from me. All of those links are down below in the description. Okay, so let's get back to Light Tracer. They have some free stuff on here that you can download and try it out and everything. And I'll talk about the costs and everything in a minute. But just a really quick sort of breakdown. It says here intuitive 3D rendering tools and stuff like that. I mean, for me, I'm used to Blender so much that there's only certain things that are kind of like intuitive to me. But what's really cool about this particular engine is you can actually run it off of the website. So you can open up Chrome, you can run it in a web browser, and you can basically start to render things and you can share projects with people pretty easily on this sort of interface. So that I think is a really interesting thing. I haven't really seen that, and the quality results are pretty good. And it's pretty fast as far as how it renders, and it does have a lot of preset stuff that I'll go into in a little bit. But I thought that was a really important thing to tell you about, is that they do have a basically web-based rendering system, which is very, very cool. So you can of course download it. So if you go to the home page here, you can download it for Windows or Mac, and you can look at all their documentation, all that kind of stuff all you want. Totally fine. It does use your components. It doesn't just use stuff off the web. So it's pretty nifty, this whole thing. So I'm going to kind of show you about how to kind of use this. Now let's talk about the licensing here. Yearly plan $5 a month, monthly plan $7. I would say that a perpetual license for $50. There are some limitations and stuff, but I do think that if it was a $50 license right now, this would be a pretty great engine for people who do small projects. You're doing product rendering, or you do small objects that are going to be in video games and all that kind of stuff, and you don't want to really like put it into a different engine or put it into Unreal or Unity or whatever, and you just want to show what the materials might look like and all that. $50 for a perpetual license. Almost nobody has perpetual licenses anymore as far as I'm aware. So 50 bucks for that, and if it does work pretty similarly for what I'm going to show you, that's a pretty good price, I would say. But because I am really geared towards not having a large overhead, I hate monthly plans or these yearly plans where it ends up being $5 a month, and you basically end up spending X amount of dollars per year. Now if you have a lot of projects you're working on and you use this engine a lot, of course this is cheaper than a lot of other engines out there, so you might get usage out of it. But this is a pretty good deal right here if most of the stuff that I'm going to show you would be the same, if not all of it. So now there's a lot of stuff in here that you can like look through, but I'm just going to show you. Oh, and here are all the people here who helped develop it. So super cool people. I'm just going to go through it as if I was sort of like jumping into it and showing you guys some, basic stuff on how it works and just sort of the intuitiveness of it. So I'm just going to kind of show you guys some general stuff. Okay. So if you are expecting this to be a full, like, long presentation and all that, it's not really going to be that. I'm just going to show you some basic stuff and just kind of walk you through how I've been kind of using it. So before we kind of like delve too deeply into it, I just want to tell you what I'm using. So I'm basically using the rings that we designed in the tutorial series that's for the Cycles engine. So I'll put a little card up here. You can go to that and check that out if you'd like. The objects will be available to patrons for downloads and all that. So if you want to become a patron, you can do that. The link's down below. But basically, I did a very, very, very fast UV unwrap. So I did basically a smart UV project like this. and just saved out these so that I can quickly just throw it into the engine. So if you're doing this for real, you want to properly UV unwrap it and everything. But just letting you know that's how I did it, and that's why you're going to see probably some weird texturing stuff, but it's fine. So I'm going to be using the version that is the like installed version, just because I don't want to deal with any issues if the internet kind of goes down in the middle of this. So, but you can pretty much, as far as I can tell, do a lot of this stuff, if not all of it, through the web-based browser. So it sort of starts you off with this, object where it kind of gives you a demo on how some of these, materials might look. And what's really cool is it should be pretty familiar, this sort of interface. A lot of render engines have something very similar. Over here on the left, you have all of your objects, and I'll go into some of this stuff in a minute. Over here, you have your HDRIs. You can change it to no lighting in the scene. You can see that there's an emission shader on one of these objects here, HDRI, or you can use a gradient if you'd like, and you can change the different colors of the gradient with these sliders down here. And you can also change, which is really cool, you can change the backplate to something else. So if you wanted to change this to a different sort of backplate, an image or something like that, and you're putting it within a scene, you can kind of do that here with an image. Or you can use a gradient instead of the HDRI. So for example, I go to HDRI, but the background stays the same. That's pretty neat. I think that's a very cool thing that they did. It makes it pretty simple, and it's what a lot of engines have, and it's actually a lot easier to navigate this. So if we wanted to change the HDRI here, all we do is click on this, and you can choose all of these preset HDRIs. I'm going to change the backplate to none just so we can for sure see the background change. And we can go here, change the map here. So that's neat. You can then change the intensity down here, and change a lot of the way that these things are rotated and everything, and rotate it around the Z like this if you'd like. Very cool. You can also add lamps. The way that lamps are done in here, it's kind of not the way that I'm kind of used to. So over here, you add an emitter, and you can move this lamp around so you can see the reflection there. You can kind of move it. See that? And you can actually, over here on the right with the parameters, you can kind of create a unique shape. So if I pull this down, pull this up, pull this down here, you can sort of create like, sort of like what HDRIs do, where they change the intensity based on a particular mapping. And then with power here, you can increase the amount that it's, emitting. You can change how big these things are. So you can stretch and squash by removing this scale uniform thing here. So really cool stuff. You could do image based as well, where you grab an image and you put that in there as the emitter. Not going to do all of that kind of stuff, but you can see how versatile this is pretty quickly just by adjusting a few things. So very very cool. Let's delete that. So you can click this right here. So up here you can go to materials, you can go to the emitters, you can go over here to the scene graph nodes, which basically shows your objects and everything. But I'm just gonna delete that emitter for now. In the viewport here, you can. I'm using Alt. Oh, so down here on the left, I have this thing that shows the keyboard commands. Let me just remove that a little bit. So sorry if you didn't see what I was doing down here. So that's what everything looks like down in the bottom. So you can change this intensity. You can change this backplate, um, gradient image, all that kind of stuff down here. Very very cool. Sorry, I had that thing in the way. Let me bring it back up so you guys can see what I'm doing. So Alt and left click and drag will sort of rotate around. Right click seems to rotate kind of like the pivot point is the camera or something. That's what I think it's doing. And then middle mouse is just sort of like your drag. So those are the basic commands here. You can grab things and move them around with different key presses. So to move this around, you can grab it by this center mouse here, or this center sort of like grab here. You can move it along a plane by moving it this way and this way, just clicking on these different um, arrows and these different pieces here. So that's basically how you can do all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to Control Z and put it back where it was. Then in order for you to sort of like change how to transform it, you click here, You can go to rotate, and you can actually rotate this stuff within here like that. You can scale it. And there's other things you can do. I mean, best thing to do is play around with all this sort of stuff in here. I'm just gonna, do some basic stuff. So, your basic commands that you would see in most engines are right there. You can reset the position and everything just by clicking that button, which is really cool. So that's basically it for that. It's pretty, bare bones, and it will just basically get it to where you can just move an object and put it into a position that you really need it to be in. Now, what's cool is you also have a texture library. So if I select this object here and I go up here to the library, it will actually pull up an entire materials library, and you can just click on any of these. So if I wanted a metal, I can click here. Obviously go to copper because it's the best looking metal ever. And we will rotate around it. And what's really cool is they actually have some like brushed copper stuff that you can use. So you can see that there's some like a material map that's been put on there. And if we go over to the properties tab, you can change a lot of this stuff. So if you go here to principled and you go down where it says base layer, click this little drop down here. There's a reflectivity here slider. There's fabric sheen, transparency, stuff like that. Now, obviously, this is set to a metal, so some of this is probably not going to be as visible as it should. Um, let's put this back to metal. You can change the roughness value here, or like you can see down here, you can use textures for those. So that's why some of these aren't working, is because it has these different textures down in here. Anisotropy, you can turn that on or off. You can see that right there is changing the way that the spread is happening on the surface of the metal. So your anisotropic sort of like filtering effect is right there. And subsurface, if you actually have something that has like skin effects or something like that, looks like the shading on the edges here are a little bit funky. Let's change this. Yeah, that's not super great, but there's probably a way you can fix that with different lighting or more samples or something. But let's just kind of move on here to some of this stuff. So you can make stuff emitting. So there it's now an emission. You can change a texture for the emission here. So if we, I don't know, pick that one, it's just there probably from this object here or something. You can basically make an object have an emission property and all that kind of stuff. So, clear coat, all these textures and stuff, really cool. A lot of the basic PBR texturing stuff that you would expect to see. Glass, you can change it to a glass material, and there's a lot of that sort of stuff in the materials library as well. You can change it to different colors, and you can change the way that it's reacting just by starting from here as a base and then going into the properties and changing a couple of these items here. So pretty cool stuff. I'm not going to go into the details on how to make specific textures and everything or materials because that's not really what this is about. Now, one really cool thing that you can do is you can make a floor. So if you click this right here, you can change the type of floors that you make. Most people are going to want this bent floor here. So it creates that sort of like ramped effect that most people are looking for when they're rendering out their objects and they want just a very smooth background. And of course, what that means is you can take that object, go to the library, and let's just pick, let's go to cloth, see what they got in here. So let's pick, this one here, go back to properties and change the color, which is right up here. Change that to like a white or something. And there you have a very sort of plain background to put your item on. So really cool stuff with all of that in regarding your materials and everything. Now, what's cool is there's a lot of stuff up here as well that can change how things are reacting. So right here, hide and show UI panels. You can save your image by using this here, or you can go up to this little menu up here and export an image up here, which is neat. And right here, enable or disable tile-based rendering, and then enable the denoiser, which I am not using because I don't like how long it takes sometimes to do the denoising, so I usually turn that off. Now, one thing that I find a little bit weird is if you go over to the rendering over here and you look at the resolution, it says adjust to window size. And the detail, and I'll show you this when we actually import an object, the detail isn't like great with this on. the adjust window to size. So if you deselect this and you actually change this to like a 4K, you can get proper, like at least on my monitors, because I have 4K monitors, you can get a better resolution that way. So if you find that it's still really like blurry and not really detailed, that will help you out by just deselecting this adjust to window size here and then changing your resolution here. So let's go ahead and let's start a new. So let's do load scene. Not exactly sure how to just open up a rando scene here because I'm going to show you guys how to do the actual view and the camera settings in a minute. But let's just take all this stuff. I'm going to delete the scene. So let's also delete the floor. And let's just basically when you export your OBJ, and that's what I did here. I'm just going to left click and drag that and put it right in here. And you can see that it says recompute smooth per vertex normals. Let's just click that on group objects with same material. That will be fine because there's just basically just two metal objects and then two diamond objects. And then there's all this stuff here. Don't worry about any of this stuff really. Just keep it as Y up. Click add. And there you go. We have our OBJ that's been imported. So there it is. Click on one of the objects here and you can see that they're grouped because we said to group it together by material and I had the same materials on there. We're going to go up to library. We're going to go to metal. And for this, we are going to go to the, let's do brushed. Let's do brushed titanium. Why not? So there's brushed titanium. And if we look at it really closely, you can see that there is a bump map put on it. And we can sort of zoom around the scene. And you can see that it looks like there's probably some seams right here. I think that's just from the bad UV unwrap, but I can't be 100% sure because sometimes at different angles you can't see it, sometimes you can. It's kind of weird. It's probably the UV unwrap, but I'm not 100% sure. So let's then zoom out a little bit and let's click on the diamonds. And what's really awesome, if we go over to glass and you go over here, you can type in diamond and they have a diamond material. And look at that, it has a dispersion effect already built in. So if you're a ring renderer and you just want quick animations and you don't want to deal too much with a whole bunch of different stuff when you're rendering it out, this is a really nice option for you. So like I said, for particular people, this might be the perfect engine for them because it can do a lot of things very, very quickly that other engines just take a lot longer to do. So let's then go and you can go to the properties, click on an object, obviously. You can go to your property and you can sort of like change this stuff here. So there's a dispersion that you can increase or decrease here. I'm going to leave it back down there. And IOR and all that sort of stuff, you can change the roughness, all that. You can do all that stuff right in here, which is really, really neat. Makes it very easy for you to make adjustments. So let's then add a floor. So go over here, click on make floor, a bent floor, and we want to render this out so that if we render it, we want it to be sort of like over on the left here, like always. So something like this, maybe, or maybe maybe up here like that. Put it over here. Now, one thing I have noticed is that the rotation seems to be just around this like center of axes in the frame here. So when you do a sort of like, let's actually hide the panels, that one there. So when you actually want to like do a composition where it's over on the right a little bit, it does kind of get a little bit weird. There's probably a way to make the navigation a little bit easier, but whatever. The other thing is up here, I haven't talked about this. Let's turn back on this. So up here you can see the render passes, so you can change the render passes here. So you can see like the normals, you can see the albedo, you can see the rendered version, and then there's this right here, and it's a targeted number of samples per pixel. So I have it on really really high because that's what that's what I do. This is probably a default at like 256 or something, and you do kind of see a difference when it's lower, it's faster, but it's a little bit more noisy. So that's fine. I'm going to set this back to like, let's just do like 500 for now. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to render. And we're going to change the resolution here. So let's make this 3140 and height 2160. And you can see here, adjust to window size, take that off. It does seem like it gets a little bit more clear. If we zoom way in here, you can see how clear that is. And then if we click this, it gets a little bit more fuzzy. So that's why I keep it on. I deselect that there. So the other cool thing is if we go over to view, you can change how all of this stuff is rendering. You can change this to a different focal length. You can change how your video recording is being done. I'm not going to go into this because I haven't really played with this, but you can do some like quick animations and stuff like that. And there is a way to turn on the compositing or the composition marker. So let me just find that really quick. Right here on the top right, it says right here, show rule of thirds. So if we click that on, you can see that, hopefully you can see that there's a rule of thirds gridding that's going across. Let's actually change this to a darker material so that you can see that. So there we go. You can see that. And let's go back to the view and let's hide our panels here. Let's just put it there. Whoops. Let's deselect that there. So maybe you want to do something like this here, where it's kind of looking down at it like that. And this actually, let's zoom out a bit. This is not long enough for our composition. So one thing that is kind of a criticism is I'm not really sure if you can split the panels here, but it is really hard to make some adjustments because you're kind of moving the camera around whenever you're moving stuff around. So when you want to like grab an object and look at the actual widgets, it becomes a little bit tricky. So let's go here and I'm going to scale this on not the X, the Y. So it makes it a little bit longer like that. And then there we go. We'll do something like this here. And let's turn back on the panels. And we can actually change this from pinhole here to depth of field. So you can see now we have a depth of field going on. And what we want to do is we want to target, it says here autofocus on closest object at the center. So it's actually focused on the ground right now because it's what's in the center of the screen here. So let's turn this off. And we want to use this to basically change the focus. So now it's like right here. So let's maybe put it there. So now we have the focus is more on the foreground of the object here. And you can turn off things like the HDR bloom effect. So you can see how that takes the glow down. We can also go over to the properties. Let's see, actually rendering here. If you go to rendering, you can go to max bounces. Make that go way up so we can get some more stuff going on with our diamonds here. The clamp, which is set to 10, we can increase that by a lot, and you can see that it starts to throw more of those caustics all over the place. And depending on your lighting setup, you get some really cool effects with metals and stuff like that. So that's really, really cool. And you can change your filtering here by the linear and nearest. I'm not really going to go into that right now. Let's just change the power clamp and let's like put it at like I don't know 15 or something. And you have this random number coherency here, so you can read what that does, and the offset factor and all that kind of stuff. So you can play around with all that stuff. I'm not going to do that right now because it's just too much right now. The other thing here is the bloom. So you can go here and you can change the amount of glow right there and all that. It's a lot like Eevee on how that works. Watermark effect, and you can change the denoising here, which I'm going to leave as disabled because I usually don't really like denoisers, so we're just going to leave that off. But you can see that it's pretty quick in rendering your scene here. And if we go over and we turn off the composition guides and we turn this off, you can kind of see what your image will end up looking like. And you can see that as we move, see that it like goes out of focus, and that's because the camera's closer to it. So again, it'd be nice to be able to like, I don't know, do some alterations in a different sort of perspective, like actually be able to see where the camera focal point is, so that you can, instead of sort of like guesswork here, um, you can actually see where that might be in a different sort of like view, and there'd be like an outline to show it to you. But obviously, I think this is still a work in progress, and they're developing it and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure that hardly anybody's seen this, but you can get a really cool effect. You can get a really cool, a really nice actual render out of this if you play with this a bit more. So I do recommend that you at least look at it. You should always be looking at new engines like this. And over here we can add an emitter, move this maybe up over here a little bit, like that maybe. Turn down the intensity maybe a little bit. Change the color to I don't know, a yellow maybe. It'd be nice to have actual color, like black body emission colors on here. That would be really cool. And let's change some of this maybe to a thing like that, just so it's a little variance. And let's go up here, save PNG, and we'll call this ring 2. One last thing that I forgot to do is I forgot to show you guys how to save your scene. So if you go up here to the top left, save scene, call it whatever you want. Call this ring scene if you want. I'm going to replace it. And that's pretty much how you do that. So pretty simple. You can then load it in or share it with somebody else who can load it into the engine itself and take a look at what you've done. Um, Provided they have all the materials and everything, the image materials and stuff that you were using. But yeah, pretty easy to just save your file and send it to somebody else and use the web-based browser to take a look at it. So let's actually adjust this. So let's go back up to the samples up here. You can, if you want this really, really fast, you can put it down to like, something really low, but let's make the samples go up a lot higher. So like, I don't know, let's do 2000 samples. I don't know, why not? Let's just see how detailed we can get with that. And you can see up here, there's this green line that goes, and it's basically rendering out this image. So probably 2,000 samples, a little bit overkill. So let's maybe go to 1,200 or something. And let's go here, and we'll render this out again as ring 2. Replace. So that's pretty much how you use this thing. Definitely play around with it. There's some really cool stuff you can do. It's worth at least a look. And if you're the kind of person who just renders out rings and some small items like that, like some product renders, this is probably a really great alternative for you because it is very fast from what I can tell. And you do get a lot of options, especially if you do get it for that $50 perpetual license amount. That's pretty cheap for a renderer that can do things this fast and has that dispersion effect that a lot of people are looking for. So that's going to be pretty much it on this tutorial. Hopefully you guys take a moment to check that out and let me know in the comments if you play with it, what you think about it, and I will see you guys next time on DJ Tutorials.